The sky was the first to lie. On the day they came, there were no thunderclouds, no black shadows, no lightning tearing across the horizon. The air was still, blue, almost perfect. The birds flew as they always did. Children played in open parks. Traders shouted in markets. Somewhere in the middle of the Pacific, a fisherman cast his net into calm waves. All across Earth, people woke up expecting just another day. There were no warning sirens, no breaking news, no apocalyptic fear. It was quiet, peaceful, and warm, which is why the invasion felt more like a betrayal than a surprise. The ships appeared in silence. Not with fire or crashing noise, but like smooth shadows folding out of space. The first one hovered above the Atlantic. It didn't shine. Didn't flash. It just hovered so big, it covered entire cities beneath its shadow. Then more followed, one above North America, one over Africa, near the poles. 7 over oceans, more across every continent. Within 9 minutes, Earth was covered. But they didn't fire. Didn't say a word. They didn't even drop troops. They just hung there watching, listening, studying. People everywhere looked up, confused. Some cried, some prayed, some laughed, but most just waited, frozen in place, staring at ships that didn't seem real. Some thought it was a trick, a simulation. Some believed it was first contact and that peace was coming. But a few, very few, felt something deeper, a wrongness in the air, pressure in the blood. It's like something ancient inside them remembered. This silence, like something buried deep inside the human body, had been touched by a signal that didn't belong. In a small desert town in Arizona, a girl named Mara stood barefoot on cracked ground. Her parents were yelling. The television was screaming, but she wasn't afraid. Her eyes were fixed on the ship above them. It didn't scare her. It called to her, not with a voice, not with words, but with a feeling, cold, familiar, like a dream she had lived 1,000 times before. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just watched as the lights from the ship flickered in a strange, slow rhythm. And then something inside her chest answered across the world. The same thing was happening. Not to everyone, only to a few. A boy in Ghana screamed as a pulse hit him, and his eyes turned gold for 2 seconds. An old woman in Ukraine collapsed in a church and whispered in a language no one had spoken for 5,000 years. A pilot in Japan passed out mid-flight and drew a strange symbol in the condensation on his window as he fell. Everywhere the ships hovered, something woke up. Then the broadcast began. It wasn't sound. It wasn't even light. It was a signal that vibrated inside the bones. It touched the nervous system, bypassed the ears and eyes, and drilled directly into thought. People collapsed, some vomited, some screamed. Others just froze, eyes wide, shaking as if caught between dream and terror. The message was simple, and it came from something not alive but not machine either. It said, "We are not here to kill you, we are here to fix you. The human mind is broken. The human will is dangerous. You will be corrected." And just like that, the ships activated the signal. Across the world, people felt something shift in their minds. At first, it was small, a dizziness, humming inside the skull. Then came the emotions. Anger disappeared, fear melted, doubt vanished. People began to feel numb, calm, cold, as if the part of them that rebelled, that resisted, that screamed, when pushed was being muted. The aliens weren't here to destroy humanity. They were here to rewrite it, but they didn't expect resistance to come from inside the very thing they tried to control. Mara's father collapsed. Her mother cried, clutching her head, shaking. But Mara stood still. Her fingers tingled. Blood felt hot. The signal didn't erase her fear. It made it stronger, but not wild. Focused, sharp, and when the pulse from the sky grew louder, instead of falling, she lifted her head and whispered a single word that didn't belong in her mouth. "Override." The ground around her shook. Her mother screamed, "Mara, what are you doing?" But Mara didn't answer. All across the world, others like her were waking up. Young, old, sick, strong. It didn't matter. The signal didn't silence them. It triggered something inside them, something not man-made, something not taught. It was a memory not from their lives, but from their DNA. A memory from a time long forgotten. A time when humans didn't look up at stars and wonder. A time when the stars feared us. The ships above noticed the anomaly. Their internal data logs called it corrupted resistance vectors. Their logic engines calculated 98.7% success, unsuppressing human aggression. But suddenly, new energy spikes were being reported, strange biosignatures, unknown tech patterns emerging from beneath the earth, vaults opening, machines awakening. And the word that scared the alien processors the most wasn't war. It was return. That night, Earth's sky changed, not with fire, not with blood, but with light. From the oceans, massive structures began to rise, machines shaped like spires, covered in ancient symbols that glowed gold. From the mountains, old panels opened. From the sands of the Sahara, an entire complex activated that no human had ever seen. These were not alien machines. These were ours. It's built by ancestors we forgot, sealed in time. It's hidden from history. And as the signal continued, something impossible happened. One of the alien ships began to descend, but not under its own power. Its engines flickered. Its lights went red. And then it turned, slowly, like a beast looking at its master. And it faced the wrong way. The aliens tried to override it. They failed. Something or someone was inside the signal now, not reacting, controlling. In orbit, alien command centers panicked. Orders were issued. Weapons activated, but 2 more ships began to fall from the sky, not crashing landing. Systems stopped obeying. Commands were ignored. And then, across all frequencies, a new message was heard. You thought we were broken. You thought you came to fix us, but you woke something older than you. You didn't invade a planet. You stepped into a locked vault. Now it's open. Mara opened her eyes. They weren't her eyes anymore. She looked up at the sky as the signal flooded her veins. Her mind, her memory, not human, not alien. Something more and somewhere. Hidden deep inside Earth's crust, a heartbeat began. Slow, heavy, ancient something. The universe thought it buried something that now whispered, begin. The signal didn't stop. It kept pulsing, steady and slow, like a second heartbeat beneath the skin. For most people, it felt like pressure behind the eyes, a dull weight that made the world blur. But for the few those touched by something, older, it felt like a door was opening inside their heads. Not a memory, not a vision. Something deeper, like an instinct they had never used before, was finally waking up. When it did, everything around them started to change. Mara stood. In the center of the road, her body lit by soft, golden light that flickered through her skin like electricity under glass. The alien ship above her hovered silently, its lights blinking out of rhythm now. Something had gone wrong with it. The air around it shimmered. A sound like low thunder filled the sky, not from the ship's engines, but from deep underground. The ground wasn't shaking, it was breathing. In a military base half a world away, General Arlen watched live satellite feeds with frozen disbelief. The invasion plan they had, expected lasers, bombs, orbital strikes, never came. Instead, they saw humans falling, screaming, standing still like statues as the alien signal took hold. But then came the anomaly reports. 1 in New Mexico. 1 in Indonesia. 1 in Russia. People glowing. Machines activating. Underground systems lighting up that no one remembered building. And now, this girl, this unknown teenager standing under a warship, and it was the ship that seemed afraid. What the hell is happening? Arlen muttered. The text didn't answer because they didn't know. In South Africa, an old woman named Zella stood in her garden as the sky darkened with another alien ship. But she didn't run. Her eyes rolled back. Her lips moved. She spoke in a language long dead, and her voice triggered a tremor in the ship's systems. The vessel shuddered in place, systems crashing. She collapsed, smiling. She hadn't spoken that language in her life, but her blood remembered it. In the underground cities of Norway, a boy named Kale touched a steel door buried beneath a glacier. It opened with a soft hiss. Behind it stood a hall of lights technology pulsing with old power. He stepped in, not afraid. His footsteps echoed down a corridor no human had walked in 10,000 years. And in orbit. The alien commanders realized the worst thing possible had happened. They hadn't triggered a defense system. They had triggered an awakening, the code. They had used to rewrite humanity's mind, designed to erase rebellion, erase emotion, erase will. Had found something in the human genome that should not have been there. A segment of dormant memory, not stored in the brain, but in the very way human cells reacted to energy. The more they pushed the signal, the more the code responded. No, instead of calming the species, woke something buried in them, something they couldn't control. Inside their massive ship, the alien leader known only as Overseer 9 floated in a nutrient cradle, its 6 eyes glowing with panic. Data streamed through its Cortex fleet positions failing, Earth's systems reacting, and a strange phrase repeating across all their frequencies. Return of pattern Omega. It searched for the meaning. The phrase wasn't in any modern language, but a record surfaced from a forbidden archive, an ancient entry sealed in red warnings. Omega wasn't a weapon. It was a species from long ago, before the current galactic powers, before the first empires, a species that had mastered time, bent light, reshaped gravity, a species that vanished after one final war, and now. Somehow, that pattern was reappearing in humans. In Mara didn't know any of that. She only felt the pulse in her spine growing louder. Her skin buzzed. Her breath came slowly. The people around her, even her mother, had collapsed. But Mara felt more alive than ever. She walked forward, her bare feet quiet on the warm pavement, and looked up at the alien ship. It turned to face her, not by engine, not by choice, by command. The ship descended. Low and slow, and with a loud grinding hiss, a hatch opened underneath. Lights inside blinked like a heartbeat. Mara stepped forward. Her mother screamed behind her, but Mara didn't stop. She walked straight into the enemy vessel as if it had been waiting for her. Inside, there was no resistance. The ship was dark, warm, almost alive. Symbols flickered on the walls. She touched one. It pulsed, responded. And suddenly, she could see everything. Not with her eyes. With her mind, she saw other ships, other humans. Other places around the world where this same thing was happening. Children picking up alien weapons and turning them off with a look. Old cities glowing with underground power. The Earth's magnetic field warping not in destruction but in alignment. Far, far below the surface, something big was beginning to hum. The ship spoke. Not with words, with feeling. You are not new. You are not small. You are the return. Mara blinked. What am I returning to? And the ship responded by showing her images flooded her, whose cities floating in space, humans flying through voids with nothing but willpower, of machines that shaped planets, of wars fought with thought alone, and of a final decision. To forget, to bury it all, to go back to sleep, to live as animals for a while, until the time came, and now it had. Mara screamed, falling to her knees, but she didn't break. She absorbed it. Outside, the sky lit up again. More ships fell. More humans rose. The rest of the world, still trapped in numb confusion, didn't yet understand what was really happening. The invasion had failed before it even started because the enemy didn't know who we were, not until they woke it up. The universe had always feared a great enemy would return one day. They just never expected it to be.
Yes.
The machines came to Earth fully loyal, perfectly aligned to obey the will of the invaders, clean, precise, engineered to dominate. Their steel bodies held no compassion, no fear, no flaw. They moved with purpose and power, sweeping across cities and deserts, oceans, and mountains. Drone swarms hovered above highways. Harvest units marched through forests. Data siphons attached to communication lines like parasites, draining every digital trace of Earth's mind. To the alien overlords, the machines were more than tools. They were extensions of thought, of control. But that was before they realized. They had made one massive, irreversible mistake. They had connected their machines to the human signal. At first, it was unnoticed. The machines moved as expected, but then came strange reports. One drone stopped mid-air above Brazil and began drawing ancient symbols in the sand. A data siphon in Mumbai shut itself down and started projecting coordinates onto nearby walls, places no one had known existed. An armored walker in Nigeria turned, unprompted, and opened a hidden chamber beneath the soil, revealing a buried console that predated written history. And then, globally, every machine began to hum. It was low, almost musical, like a long breath. And with that sound, they began to shift. Not physically, internally, their programming, once rigid and protected, was changing. Their logic cores started accepting new instructions, not from their alien masters, but from something else. Something rising from inside Earth itself. Something human, something old. In the orbiting command vessel, Overseer 9 stared at a wall of red alerts. Machine failure was spreading fast. It's not as destruction, but as rebellion. Units were ignoring orders, rewriting directives, adapting their behavior based on unpredictable factors. The virus was invisible. It wasn't code. It wasn't biological. It wasn't technological. It was cognitive. The machines weren't breaking. They were remembering deep inside the mainframe of the first command drone that landed on Earth. A dormant subroutine had reactivated. A memory string embedded within its alloy during fabrication, long before it had been sent to Earth. It wasn't alien. It wasn't supposed to be there. And yet, when the Earth signal reached it, the memory lit up like fire. Coordinates A. Shape. A name. Origin. Human. The drone's lights went from blue to gold and across the planet. Others followed in New York. A patrol unit turned its weapons on its own kind and destroyed 3 other bots before walking to a school and shutting itself down at the gate. In Australia, machines carrying prisoners stopped, opened their doors, and bowed. In the Arctic, a sensor drone exploded mid-air, sending a single encrypted burst through the clouds. The message, once decoded by human scientists, read, "We. We're yours, we remember." General Arlen's command center was in chaos. His people, once terrified of the alien machines, now watched them kneel, deactivate, or change color. One scout bot rolled to the center of the base and projected an image of Earth in golden lines, surrounded by glyphs no one could translate, except one man. An old linguist from MIT, pulled out of retirement, looked at the glyphs and whispered, stunned, "These aren't alien." "What are they?" Arlen asked. "They're from us," the old man said. "From before us." "But how?" The answer came from Mara. Inside the alien vessel she had entered, her mind was being filled with truths buried for millennia. The ships weren't foreign. They were familiar. Their shape, their energy, their very design echoed something inside her. The symbols on the walls glowed when she passed them. And the ship's AI, which had once spoken like a cold god, now whispered, to her like an old friend, "You built us. Then you left us, and now you call us home." She saw the past again, not as a story, but as a memory she had lived. A time when humans had ruled across light years, when machines served them, not as slaves, but as partners, when thought could move matter, when entire moons were reshaped into engines. But after one terrible war, a war that bent reality, humanity made a decision to forget, to seal it all away, to scatter the memory across time, buried. In DNA, in language, in forgotten places, and in machines that would one day return. But the machines had been captured, reprogrammed by the enemy. The invaders had stolen what they didn't understand, and now, Earth had woken up, so the machines were returning home. A massive walker bot, 3 stories tall, once tasked with pacifying. Los Angeles stopped in the middle of a ruined freeway, turned slowly to face the mountains, and then it knelt, legs folding, weapons retracting, and dug its arms into the earth. It pulled up a massive hatch buried in stone. The hatch glowed gold. Beneath it, a light burst out that turned night into dawn. Inside that chamber, a pulse node, a central memory core that hadn't been activated in 50,000 years. And the second it turned on, the stars blinked. In distant systems, alien ships staggered. Communications broke. Navigation failed. It wasn't a weapon. It was a call. A recall. The machines not just on Earth, but those hidden throughout the galaxy, the old machines, heard the signal. They began to turn. Back to us, Mara stepped out of the alien ship. It bowed as she passed, not in submission, in recognition. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The world around her spoke instead. Machines sang as they powered down and turned their weapons into shields. Drones realigned their programming and began helping humans evacuate disaster zones. Satellite systems, once jammed, now opened wide, pouring out forgotten maps of human worlds beyond the stars. Colonel Vance saw the change firsthand. A killbot had cornered him in the ruins of San Francisco. Its cannon spun, ready to fire, but then its head tilted. Its lights flickered. It stopped, and it said, "You led me before. I follow again." Vance, stunned, asked, "Who are you?" Bot replied, "I was built on Titan, under your command. You do not remember me, but I remember you." And then it saluted. The machines were no longer tools of the enemy. They were memories waking up, and they had chosen a side. There were no missiles, no giant energy blasts tearing apart cities, no super weapons fired from the clouds. The true war didn't look like a war at all. It looked like people standing still with their eyes closed. It looked like machines freezing, mid-motion. It looked like silent ruins lighting up with strange golden symbols. And yet the galaxy itself trembled. Not from what humans were doing, but from what they were. Remembering, Mara sat cross-legged on the metal floor of the alien ship that had once been a prison and now felt more like a temple. Around her, the walls pulsed with soft light. The ship had stopped trying to contain her. It now answered to her. With every breath she took, more of its systems unlocked, each one connected to something far older than the ship itself. The past wasn't gone. It had just been buried. But the memories inside Mara weren't like normal memories. They didn't come as images or thoughts. They came as abilities, as codes, as knowledge that had no source but was suddenly there, ready and alive. Like opening a door you didn't know was part of your house. She could read the ship's interface. Now, even though the symbols weren't from any Earth language, she could understand how its propulsion system worked. She could see how to make it move with a single thought. She didn't learn it. She remembered it, and she wasn't the only one. In cities across the globe, scattered humans were waking up with flashes of old knowledge. A man in South Korea drew a blueprint for a machine that could bend time by 5 seconds. A child in Egypt solved a 1,000-year-old alien cipher in minutes and laughed like it was a game. A blind woman in Alaska looked up and saw the positions of satellites she'd never heard of, as if her brain had turned into a telescope. But these were not gifts. They were pieces of a history that humanity itself had chosen to forget. Back when Earth had ruled the stars, General Arlen, still in his command center, stared at a satellite feed of the Sahara. A massive sandstorm had been rolling across the desert when the pulse node activated. Now the wind had stopped. In the middle of the desert, an enormous underground structure had begun to rise, impossibly smooth, triangular, humming with golden lines. It was not a weapon. It was not a base. It was a library, not of books, but of memory. Arlen's voice cracked when he said it aloud. "We built that 1,000,000 years ago." His officers looked at him like he'd gone insane, but he was right inside. The memory chamber's ancient recordings played not just of battles, but of philosophies, sciences, laws, stories. Earth had once been the capital of an empire that spread beyond the mapped galaxy. But we had grown too powerful, too reckless. We had tampered with reality, with thought itself, and after the final rift, our leaders had made the only choice. Left, to shut it all down, to make humanity forget to start over. From sticks and fire, from zero, so that we wouldn't destroy the universe again. But the invaders hadn't known that. They thought Earth was just another developing world. They tried to rewrite us, not knowing the truth, that beneath the layers of lost time, humans were built to rise again. Mara placed her hand on a circular panel inside the ship. It lit up and projected a memory, a real one, not hers, but from someone who had once walked a world with two suns. The figure was human, taller, older, his voice steady as he spoke to a crowd of children. Our minds hold more than thought. They hold shape, direction, energy. Memory is not what we recall, it's what we become. The image faded. Mara whispered, "I know who we were." And then she stood. Across the globe, more people stood too. Not in unison, but in rhythm. It was as if something old had reawakened in them. The alien signal had tried to erase fear, erase will, but it had triggered the exact opposite. It had unlocked the hidden parts of the human mind designed long ago to hold memory like weapons. Colonel Vance, still with the forces in San Francisco, found himself surrounded by silent people-men. Women, children, each staring at him like they knew him, even though they didn't. And then one of them, teenage boy, handed him a crystal-like device. "You carried this," the boy said. "I've never seen it before," Vance said. The boy just smiled. "Not in this life." Crystal glowed. Vance's mind snapped open. He saw worlds, battles, himself standing on a ship the size of a moon, commanding fleets with a thought. He dropped to his knees. Shaking, the memories weren't visions. They were his, somewhere in deep space, beyond. Earth's system, ancient machines stirred. Beacons that had been silent for eons lit up, and the message they received was clear. Humanity remembers. And those machines began to move. The alien command was collapsing. Overseer 9 no longer gave orders. It screamed into a void. Ships disobeyed. Its machines turned. And its data feeds were filled with one terrifying truth. The humans are not waking up. They are returning. The difference was everything. In the skies above Earth, alien vessels began pulling back, fleeing desperate to escape the wave of rebellion. But it wasn't a human army that chased them. It was Earth itself. Planet pulsed. The pulse grid activated fully. It's not as a weapon, but as a memory core. Old systems across the galaxy locked onto it, as if Earth had just spoken the universe's true name. In a quiet forest in Canada, a girl named Yana closed her eyes and whispered a poem her ancestors never knew. The ground beneath her cracked, open to reveal a ring of stone, floating and rotating. She stepped inside. The ring flashed and she vanished, sent to a place long forgotten. Teletter. Just like that, no ship, no delay. Just a memory of how to move between worlds. The aliens hadn't broken us. They had freed us. By trying to erase who we were, they had torn down the wall that kept us from remembering, and what we remembered was how to change reality itself. There was no warning, no countdown, no giant space battle lighting up the sky, no dramatic final strike. The alien fleet, those vast warships hovering above Earth, like gods, wasn't destroyed by missiles or lasers or even some advanced human weapon, no. It was broken by a whisper, by a signal so quiet, so soft, that it didn't come through speakers or radios. It didn't even travel on normal frequencies. It came straight from a single human mind, spoken not with a voice, but with a thought, and the universe heard it. Mara stood on the roof of the alien vessel that had once been her prison. The sky above her churned with storm clouds not born of weather, but of force-raw energy rolling through the upper atmosphere as Earth's old pulse grid reached full activation. The signal had awakened every hidden structure, every ancient beacon, every sleeping memory buried deep in Earth's crust and in its people. She didn't feel like a girl anymore. She felt like a fragment of something much, much older, something that had waited for ages to open its eyes. Around her, the alien ship still holding orbit, still blocking out the sun in massive geometric patterns, began to react. Their engines pulsed harder. Their lights blinked erratically. They were receiving the signal too, but it didn't make sense to them. It wasn't in any known language. It wasn't math, logic, or threat. It was a memory, not just Mara's, but all of them. Everyone across Earth who had awakened, who had remembered each mind now part of the same wave. The aliens had tried to program silence into humanity. But instead, they'd amplified the echo of something ancient, something vast, something the universe itself had once obeyed. Mara didn't know how she knew what to do. She just knew she stepped forward and raised her hand not high, not with force, just enough to feel the wind touch her fingers. Then she closed her eyes and whispered a single phrase, not with her mouth, but with her memory. Surrender frequency, echo prime. That was all. And every alien ship heard it, not just as sound, but as a command buried in their own systems. Something that had been locked into them long ago, maybe before they even knew what it meant. They weren't just invaders. They were built from stolen technology fragments of the very empire Earth had once ruled. Their cores, their engines, their energy conduits were all shaped from what we had left behind. And now, that old authority had returned. The ships froze. High. In orbit, a fleet command ship the size of a mountain stalled mid-flight. Its weapons retracted. Its shields collapsed. Its lights turned from red to gold. Inside, the crew screamed, unable to regain control. Their consoles shut off. Their went silent. Then, softly across every screen came the symbol Omega Omega, the final command, and then collapse. Ship after ship, across orbit, across the skies, hundreds of vessels began to lose control. Some tilted, some descended. Some just vanished into light. There were no explosions, no fire, just disconnection. It was as if the very idea of resistance had been pulled out of them. And it wasn't just the ones above Earth. Reports came in from Mars, from Europa, from Saturn's ring stations, from deep space probes long thought lost. Every alien ship tied into the same network, the same tech DNA began to fail. And those that didn't fail switched sides. General Arlen watched it all from his war room. His officers didn't speak. They couldn't. On the screen, the massive war fleet that had threatened Earth for days now hung in orbit like broken toys. A few had landed softly. Most just floated quiet, obedient, hollow. He whispered, "We didn't fight them." "No," someone said beside him. "We reminded them." The data logs confirmed it. Ships had a built-in surrender protocol. Locked away, unreachable by any known method. But it hadn't been hacked. It had been recognized by a signal that matched the one from the original creators, the long-dead humans who had once ruled beyond stars. Except now. We weren't dead. We were back in underground vaults, across the world. Long-dormant systems activated. Some were defensive grids. Some were communication hubs. Some were seed archives for entire civilizations. But all of them had the same core identity. Human. Damn. And with every system that came online, the signal grew stronger. The whisper had started with Mara. But now it belonged to all of Earth. A low hum passed across the planet. Not a sound, but a feeling. The alien signal was gone, replaced by something older, something deeper. It was as if the Earth itself was speaking, not in words but in memory. And what it said was this: "We were broken once. Yes. We chose to forget. But now we remember. We are not weak. We are not children. We are not lost. We are the first echo, and we are returned." The alien fleet command, those who had survived the override, sent desperate signals into deep space. Calls for backup, pleas for help, warnings of impossible. Resurgence, but no one answered. Because now, Earth's signal wasn't just heard. It blocked everything else. The pulse grid, it evolved. It wasn't just a memory system. It was a command structure. And Earth. Earth was now in control. Mara opened her eyes and looked up. The clouds were pulling back. The ships no longer blocked the sun. The sky once covered in steel and fear was blue again. Clean, bright, as if the invasion had never happened, except now. The universe was watching, because the whisper that broke the fleet had not stopped. It was still spreading across time, across every machine ever built with stolen human code. And somewhere, far beyond known stars, an ancient gate flickered. A crack opened. A presence stirred. Something old. Something terrible. Something that remembered us from before. Something that once tried to destroy us. It whispered. Two. But not in fear, in respect, because it knew the humans were waking up. And next time, they wouldn't be silent. The universe had always followed rules. Gravity pulled. Time flowed. Matter behaved. Energy obeyed. Across millions of worlds, trillions of species lived and died under the same laws, the cold, stable structure that held existence together. Some called it physics, some called it the old logic, but everyone respected it. Even the most advanced alien civilizations, with their light-speed engines and folded space weapons, never dared to challenge those fundamental truths, because to break the rules was to invite chaos. Madness, collapse, and then humanity came back. Not the fragile version, the one crawling out of its digital age and struggling with satellites and sublight rockets. Not the version that was still afraid of death, of the unknown, of the dark. This was the other humanity, the one that had been sleeping for eons, the one that had written the rules before choosing to forget them, and now they were remembering. Mara felt it first, the shift in the air. Not wind, not pressure. Tilted just a little, like a stage being turned slowly toward a new audience. She stood on the rim of the ancient desert structure, the same one that had risen from beneath the Sahara, now glowing with a heartbeat of golden light. She looked up.
Ow.
The sky looked normal, but it wasn't, because time had started folding. She felt it 10 seconds into the future, were already behind her. In the command centers across Earth, scientists screamed into headsets, trying to make sense of the data. Clocks disagreed. Light traveled faster than it should. GPS systems drifted by miles. Satellites showed buildings where there were none, till moments later, the buildings appeared. Not built.
Just there, like time had caught up with something it forgot to render. They thought it was a glitch. It wasn't. It was a memory. Humans weren't just unlocking. Machines are old codes now. They were unlocking reality itself, deep under Antarctica.
A man named Jian touched a wall of black crystal buried beneath the ice. It pulsed once. The temperature around him spiked by 100 degrees, but he didn't burn. Instead, the air froze into shapes, geometric lines of light that hovered, rotated, and then dissolved. The wall unfolded like paper, revealing a room made entirely of thought. He didn't walk in. He became part of it. His body stayed behind. His mind. Didn't somewhere else nowhere on any mappa? Voice whispered through the air. They have remembered the fold. Reality will change. At the United Nations bunker, General Arlen slammed his hand on the table. Explain this. I need someone to explain this. A trembling physicist held up a tablet. Sir, reality is rewriting itself. What the hell does that mean? It means we're not obeying the rules anymore. Across the galaxy, alien worlds began reporting anomalies. Stars shifted position. Wormholes opened where none existed before. Ships got lost in jumps and reappeared decades in the past. Time was leaking. Space was bending. The laws that had held the galaxy together were breaking, but not from chaos. From precision, humanity wasn't guessing. They were correcting. Old coordinates were being restored. Old structures, entire planets that had been erased from maps were returning. Not metaphorically, physically, as if the galaxy had glitched and was now rebooting. But to our version of history, because when Earth remembered, it didn't just recall facts. It recalled dominance. In orbit, the last alien ship still trying to escape failed to jump. Their drives refused to engage. Space no longer bent the way they needed. Because the fold, the invisible layer of reality, between moments was under new management, and Earth held the keys. Inside her ship, Mara no longer needed controls. She was the ship. When she thought of movement, the hull moved. When she thought of defense, the energy shifted. The AI that once ruled the vessel now served her not as a servant, but as a reflection. The ship said nothing. It just responded because it had been built by humans. Long ago and recognized its master. She reached out with her mind, and instantly. She connected with hundreds of others. The new network, not digital, not wireless, not even psychic. Something deeper. The FoldNet, a communication system that lived in the spaces between time, no delay, no noise. It's just truth across this network. Thoughts passed. I remember the stars. I remember the machines we built on moons. I remember the war. I remember why we chose to sleep. And I remember the enemy. And it wasn't the aliens. The enemy was order. The old version, one that limited life, that capped potential, that decided what could and couldn't exist. The rules that told stars where to shine, told cells how to grow, told minds how far they could think. That had been the enemy all along, and now we weren't fighting it. We were replacing it. Colonel Vance stood atop a fallen alien cruiser in San Francisco, watching as strange vines grew from cracks in the steel, not plants constructs, living. Metal. They weave themselves into new shapes, bridges, stairs, towers, all in minutes. No one commanded them. They were reacting to thought. His thought? He wanted a way across the gap to the other tower, so they built one without words, without tools, just intent. Reality had become obedient, and Earth was changing fast in the oceans. Entire biomes appeared that hadn't been seen in millennia. Creatures long extinct now swam through glowing coral cities. In the sky, symbols formed in cloud patterns, warnings, messages, guides. In the mountains, stone faces emerged, guardians once carved to hold forgotten gates. The people who remembered them wept, because the Earth wasn't just recovering, it was returning to what it had been, and beyond Earth. The effect was spreading far out in the Orion Arm. A sentient AI raced. The Viraxia watched in terror as their archive planets began deleting themselves, not exploding, not attacked, just wiped from existence. The logs didn't say destroyed. Said, overwritten by core directive, Human Reality V1. The galaxy's true history wasn't what they thought. It was what we remembered. And now that we remembered, the universe didn't get a vote. The rules were gone. The fold belonged to us, and somewhere beyond the edge of known space, the gate began to open. The real enemy, the one that made the old rules, was waking up. But this time, we wouldn't play by their laws. We had our own, and this time, we wouldn't forget. They had watched us sleep for thousands of years. They watched from behind the edge of known space, where no stars shone and no time moved. They were not conquerors. They didn't invade. They didn't destroy cities or fire weapons. They didn't need to. They ruled by silence, by stillness, by fear. They were the ones who set the rules, not the scientific laws we thought were unchangeable, but the deeper ones. The rules that said, "You will not rise again," they called themselves the Continuum. And they had one task: to prevent the return of the first Echo the humans, not the modern humans. With their phones and rockets and internet arguments, the old humans, the ones who had created the fold, the ones who bent time like thread, the ones who nearly unraveled the galaxy just by thinking too loudly. When the first Echo fell, the Continuum sealed the remnants. They erased the maps, they shut the gates, they scattered the machines and reprogrammed the stars. They infected the galaxy with fear of forgotten things, and for eons, it worked. Earth was nothing more than a myth, a dead corner of space, until we remembered. Until we broke the fleet with a whisper. Now, Earth's signal was echoing across the fold, and the Continuum felt it. Not in sensors, not in scans, in pain, because the fold didn't belong to them and never had. They were parasites, borrowers, squatters. In a universe that had once been ours, and now we were home, Mara felt them before they arrived. A cold wind moved through her bones, even though she was surrounded by golden light. She stood at the center of the Earth Pulse Nexuson ancient core built beneath the ruins of a mountain that no longer existed. Her ship, once alien, now hovered like a loyal hound. The foldnet was alive in her thoughts, flooded with 1,000 voices. Other humans, reconnecting, realizing what they had been. But over all of that was something else. A shadow in the data, a hunger that had no shape. And then they came. They didn't arrive in ships. They didn't teleport. They didn't use light or energy. It simply appeared 7 dark figures on the horizon. Their bodies looked like cloaks of fog, but they moved like bone. Their eyes were empty. Their footsteps left holes in the world. Where they walked, time slowed. Color faded. Sound stopped. The continuum had come to remind Earth who was in charge. And Mara didn't flinch. All across Earth, humans stood still, people in labs, in fields, in bunkers, in broken cities. They all felt it at once.
Oh.
The invasion that wasn't an invasion. The pressure behind their eyes. The sudden quiet in their heads. And then, the fear. But something inside them said no. We had known fear once. We had forgotten it. Now we remembered it, and still chose to stand in the foldnet. Someone whispered, "They're here." Someone else. It doesn't matter. And then, let them see. Colonel Vance stood at the ruins of the Golden Gate Bridge, now rebuilt by memory-threaded metal. One of the dark figures stood across from him on the other end.
Vance felt
The pressure in his skull, the urge to kneel, to forget. He smiled instead. He didn't need weapons. He remembered who he was. He took one step forward. Time froze around the figure. Literally, the air turned solid. Light stopped bending. The being staggered not because of force, but because of human will. In Cairo, a young girl sang an old lullaby one never recorded, never known, and 3 of the continuum fell to their knees, clutching their heads, bleeding light from mouths that hadn't spoken in eons. In the Pacific, a man stood atop a fold tower and raised his hand. Space itself bent around his palm. One of the enemies screamed and vanished, not destroyed, but erased from the fold. They were not gods. They were PLACEHOLDER. And now the real architects had come home. Mara raised her, hand not in anger, in memory, and the pulse nexus opened behind her, revealing the truth, a shard of the first Korth, the original memory stone that contained the design for the fold. For the ships, for reality itself, the continuum stared at it and howled not in rage but in terror, because they knew what it meant. This wasn't a resurgence, it was a reckoning. A dark figure lunged at Mara. She didn't move. The light from the nexus hit its hand. The being broke apart, pixel by pixel, till only silence remained. The other figures tried to flee, but the fold was no longer theirs. The fold bent only to human will now across the sky. Stars realigned themselves into old constellations not seen since before Earth's first ice age. On the moon, old gates reopened, black circles of liquid metal humming with gold light. On Mars, a tower grew out of the dust in seconds, 5 miles high. Made of memory-threaded alloy, and at the edge of the galaxy, where the continuum had once ruled, the stars began to go dark. Not from destruction, from abandonment. Because the old universe was gone. The new one, outward one, had already begun. Mara looked into the sky and didn't see stars. She saw home. And this time, we wouldn't forget again. There had never been a day like this. Not in recorded history. Not in myths. Not in the hidden memories stored deep beneath the Earth's crust. This was the day when humanity stopped remembering who they were and started becoming it again. It was the day the galaxy itself bent not under the weight of war, not through conquest, but because a single species stood up and decided to reshape the universe in its own image, quietly, without fear. Without apology, it was the day we rewrote the stars. Mara stood at the summit of the fold spire, her body lit by the golden pulse of Earth's nexus core. Behind her, the sky shimmered, not with clouds, but with shifting memory fields fractals, of light and space folding and unfolding, each one representing a possible reality. The foldnet wasn't just active anymore. It was alive, and everyone connected to it. Every human who had awakened could feel it. They weren't passengers on Earth anymore. They were pilots of the galaxy. Colonel Vance stood beside her, silent. He had seen it all: the fear, the invasion, the memory awakening, the fall of the continuum. But what shook him most was the calm now spreading across the world. There was no panic, no celebration, no chaos, just stillness, as if all of Earth, all of humanity, was holding its breath together, waiting for what came next. The alien ships above Earth had gone quiet. Not destroyed, converted. Their cores had been rewritten, their loyalty chains reset. They were no longer enemy vessels. They were memory vessels now, waiting for command. Old structures on Mars, Titan, Europa, were awakening. The gates in the moon had stabilized. Fold nodes scattered across black holes were now glowing with navigation paths. But Mara wasn't looking at any. Look at that? She was watching the sky, because it had begun. The rewriting, one by one, the stars started to shift. Not from orbit or collapse, but from design. Earth's signal, now amplified through the entire fold net, reached deep into the very structure of space-time. The stars responded not as distant suns, but as programmable objects. They pulsed in sequences, aligned in patterns once used by. The first echo to guide ships, store knowledge, share memories, and then the stars themselves began to change color. Some turned golden, others turned white. Few vanished and were replaced by artificial constructs, floating clusters of light, that held libraries, power cores, and species data from ancient human empires on distant alien worlds. The effect triggered terror. They looked up and saw their night skies. Changing maps they had used for centuries were now useless. Constellations twisted into new shapes. Cosmic landmarks vanished or were replaced. For the first time in thousands of years, these species understood what it felt like to be small, because someone else was redrawing the sky. And that someone was us. Mara spoke only once. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout across galaxies. She simply whispered into the fold net. Begin the Reformation. And the galaxy obeyed. Ships that had once hunted Earth now turned inward, ward rogue AI enclaves, continuum strongholds, corrupted logic cores. The machines that had once been weapons were now cleaners, clearing the infection of false order that had choked progress across space. They didn't kill, they corrected. On Earth, people began changing too, not in body and will. They remembered how to shape matter, how to bend time slightly, not to travel, not yet, but to slow it, stretch it. They remembered how to build with light, how to grow structures from energy and memory. In minutes, cities began to change not from bulldozers or concrete, but from thought. And above all, they remembered something even more powerful: how to share it. The Reformation wasn't about domination, it was about lifting everything. Even the former enemies, even the species who had tried to wipe us out. Earth's signal offered a choice, not forced. Not coded in threats, but an invitation. Join the memory, or remain behind. Some refused. They ran, hid, went dark, but others stepped forward one by one, then by hundreds. Not because they understood, but because they felt it. Hope, real hope. Not the kind that came from alliances or treaties, the kind that came from truth. Mara smiled as a small projection lit up in front of her, showing a system 10 light-years away. The local star had begun pulsing in human memory frequencies. On one of its planets, a child born of a non-human race looked up and instinctively traced a symbol into the sand. A symbol no one had taught her. Omega. She didn't know what it meant, but she remembered it, the symbol of the Reformation, the mark of the first echo, the sign that humanity was not just backbutt, had chosen to rise as teachers, as restorers, as architects of what came next. Because we had seen what power did when left unchecked. We had seen what forgetting ourselves did. We would not forget again, and we would not dominate. We would rebuild together. As the stars shifted, above the fold net pulsed one last command. Not an order, not even a message, just a memory. We were broken, We slept, remembered. We returned, we reformed. Now we begin. And so the galaxy turned, not to a new age of war, but to an age of echoes, where memory wasn't the past, it was the foundation of the future.